we took votes about which questions were going to be asked. And I think 3 million people voted, or 3.5 million people voted. I have to say that there was one question that was voted on that ranked fairly high, and that was whether legalizing marijuana would improve the economy and job creation. And I don't know what this says about the online audience, but I just want, I don't want people to think that this was a fairly popular question. We want to make sure that it was answered. The answer is no. I don't think that is a good strategy to grow our economy.
Joining me now is Harvard economist Jeffrey Miron. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There seems to be a difference in people's minds about the legalization of marijuana, which seems to enjoy broader support than the legalization of all drugs. Why do you say just legalizing marijuana is not enough?
Well, legalizing marijuana would certainly be a very useful first step. But a lot of the violence that we're seeing, a lot of the underground market, is not related to marijuana. It's related to these other drugs. So if we were only to do marijuana, we would only have a small impact on all the violence, on all the corruption, on all the disruption of other countries that's caused by U.S. prohibition of drugs and the U.S. forcing prohibition of drugs on other countries.
This is what I want to ask you about. We talk about what's going on at the U.S.-Mexico border. We've talked about the growing violence in some measure because Mexico's trying to crack down a little bit more on these cartels. Can you explain, as you compare what our drug policy is to prohibition and why you feel that, you know, trying to make alcohol illegal failed and we're learning the hard lessons about trying to make drugs illegal?
I mean, any attempt to drive a market underground, to ban it, to prohibit it, means that it may shrink a little bit, but it's mainly just going to become an underground market. That's what we saw for alcohol in the 20s and 30s. That's what we've seen for drugs. That's what we've seen in other societies and other times for gambling, for prostitution, for all these things. And in underground markets, people resolve their disputes with violence because they can't use lawyers and courts and advertising. And so guns are the only logical alternative, and we observe that over and over again with any kind of prohibition.
Well, while you may be theoretically right, isn't there just a sort of common sense argument? Somebody could have a couple glasses of wine over dinner, and you can't really be a social user of injecting heroin.
Well, the fact is that people can use many drugs, including heroin, for long periods, okay, if they have access to a legal supply that's a moderate price, if they're able to consume it in a way which is not inherently dangerous, such as injecting or sharing dirty needles. And of course, people can do horrible things with alcohol if they're going to be irresponsible. People who use tobacco in a regular way risk very serious negative consequences. For all these other dangerous things, potentially dangerous things, we keep them legal, but we tax and regulate them, and we address the irresponsible uses with things like drunk driving laws, but we keep the market above ground, which avoids all these negative things like the violence.
I mean, would you go to a doctor who said, you know, I just occasionally use heroin on the weekends? I mean, would you get a surgery from a doctor like that? Would you want your kids going to nursery school where their teachers say, you know, I do some meth and trying to keep my weight down?
The fact is that we're all doing that now. We just don't know it. Okay, we are going to doctors who may be alcoholics, who may be misusing currently illegal drugs. Some of the teachers of our kids are doing all those things on the weekends, but it's just been pushed underground. So by bringing it above ground, we're more likely to know about it. We're more likely to be able to use things like drug testing procedures to address the irresponsible uses of drugs on or off the job. Pretending that we're getting rid of it with prohibition is clearly not changing the fact. We know that millions and millions of people are doing these things every day, but we're pretending that it's not there. It's already a problem.
I know that, you know, the article that you wrote, and it was very thoughtful. I'm playing devil's advocate here with you, but how do we find a way to tax or get income off of what's still going to be illegal, right, internationally? I mean, if people are bringing drugs over here illegally, even though we may say they're legal here, how do we control all of that traffic? How do we control all of that revenue that's coming in and find a way to tax it and have it work?
Well, if we were to actually legalize it, I have no doubt that most of the rest of the world would immediately legalize as well. The U.S. historically has been the biggest advocate of prohibition. We, in fact, forced it on the rest of the world in 1919 as a condition of signing the treaty that ended World War I. I'm sure that lots of Latin American governments would be delighted to legalize because a huge amount of the corruption and violence in their countries is due to U.S. pressure to maintain this policy.
The housing prices
crisis on Wall Street.
Wall Street over Main Street.
The economy is doing badly right now. Companies are collapsing, and we don't know when everything's going to recover. But you know what could help? How about the biggest cash crop in the United States? You probably think it's corn, and why not? It isn't everything. But you'd be wrong. And it's not wheat either. It's actually bigger than corn and wheat combined. It's marijuana. With an estimated take of $35 billion a year, marijuana is by far the largest.
I just don't know, which candidate would be the best for me to smoke weed in my minivan.
How much of that money is growing our economy? Not much. Well, unless some guys at Stanford smoke up one night and think of the greatest search engine ever invented. Not that I'm implying anything. This $35 billion crop, and again, that's just in the United States, isn't taxed, regulated, or employs anyone in the legal market. Imagine what kind of money, both in sales and taxes, could be collected from it if it were legalized. And years of scientific evidence, much of it from the United States government, proclaims that pot is safer than alcohol and should be made legal.
This is not the time to be complacent.
So, the only question is, why hasn't it been? After all, our economy's counting on it.
Richard Lee, and I'm the owner of the Bulldog Coffee Shop, and the Oaksterdam Gift Shop, and the publisher of the Oaksterdam News. This was the first place, so it's matured, and things are, this is the first municipality to issue permits. So I think it's a lot more mature than the other places that are just now getting clubs in the first place. If you try to figure out the overall cannabis market,
analysts rank cannabis as the #1 cash crop in America, well above cotton, wheat, and tobacco, with California responsible for 1/3 of the entire country's cannabis supply. In 2006 alone, estimated sales from California cannabis exceeded $12 billion. If taxed, these sales could have easily generated over $1 billion in government revenue.
It's like it would be like the new lottery for California.
exactly. And that's what I think it's going to be. Eventually, it's going to be a lot like gambling.
We have an opportunity now to use hemp as a fuel source instead of petroleum. And we have an opportunity to be able to use it in such a way that we create no CO2 emissions in this country anymore. And it's only going to take 6% of our agriculture to solve 100% of our energy needs. We have to talk about the elephant in the room, because most people think that hemp is marijuana, and that is a case of mistaken identity that hemp has suffered. So the astonishing fact about hemp is, with all these amazing properties, with all the things it can be made out of, we cannot grow it in this country, but we can import it into this country. And we import it by the droves. We make textiles out of it, we have cereal made out of it, waffles, clothing. I'm just thinking about the things that I buy that it's made out of. Hemp soap, I use hemp conditioner, hemp moisturizer. We have this amazing commodity in this country that could put hundreds of thousands of people to work. Our farmers that aren't growing tobacco anymore. We could really reinvigorate this economy if we made hemp legal. We want this commodity. We want lower gas prices, for one. We talked about it earlier. 6% of America's agriculture could be used to grow hemp, and it would solve 100% of our energy needs. 100%. Not 16% or less than 5%. 100%. When we talk about the history of our country and the fact that our Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper, we sailed here from the motherland of England on sails made of hemp, rope made of hemp. And like I said, Randolph Diesel created the diesel engine itself to run on hemp oil. So this is a part of the fabric of our archetype. This is who we are. In talking about hemp, for me, it's very important to make sure that people really realize, just even if you're not going to eat anything made out of hemp or buy anything made with hemp, you're putting gas in your car right now. If hemp can affect you on the level of putting fuel in your car, then know this. Hemp has no CO2 emissions whatsoever. And that is first and foremost. And the second thing is, it's completely sustainable. It's grown above ground. You chop it down, you whack it down, you process it, you make it into fuel, and it grows again. In 10 weeks, you've got another crop. So it's highly sustainable. It's very, very inexpensive to grow because it grows without pesticides. I mean, it's an ancient, mighty wonder crop. I mean, you cannot say enough positive things about this crop. Anything you can make out of plastic can be made out of hemp. You can eat it. It's the highest plant source of available protein on the face of the earth. It's got all the omegas that fish has. And most importantly, is it can be used for fuel. So the $7.5 trillion that has exited our economy over the last 7 years, that's gone to make cars out of silver in Saudi Arabia could be spent in this country. Our economy would be so robust. It's not trendy to be conscious. It's a necessity to be conscious, because if we're not conscious of the choices that we're making, then the choices will be taken away and we won't have any choices anymore. So I don't like to be very doom and gloom, because we have the answers, we have the solutions, and they're right here. And it's really important that we celebrate this and we look at this as an opportunity rather than a crisis, because it's an opportunity really for us to conserve energy, create new forms of sustainable energy, and it's a really exciting time to be alive. I just want to say thank you for being here to champion this cause through, because it's time, and the world is ready, and the world is waiting.
I don't know what this says about the online audience, but I just want, I don't want people to think